Now, this week, a petition on the Parliament website has called for a new general election, and it's gathered almost 3 million signatures at the point we are recording this, and it's going up. It's the third largest petition since 2010. It's also a little bit ridiculous, but it was referenced by Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch at this week's PMQs.
Mr. Speaker, if he wants to know what Conservatives would do, he should resign and find out. Until then...
I'll decide when there's more.
Mr. Speaker, until then, I'm the one asking the questions. There's a petition out there, 2 million people asking him to go.
Rachel, you've written about this week. Is that a good stance for Kemi to be taking?
Well, it's always interesting in situations like this to compare what politicians are saying now to what they said about a similar situation where the political issue was slightly different. So the most signed petition on the petition website on Parliament was one to revoke Article 50 and stay in the EU, which received over 6 million signatures, and that was in 2019. And I don't know if anyone is aware of this, but we didn't actually do that. We did leave the we did leave the EU. So the petition is not a kind of process for direct democracy. But we did have a debate on that, and I think there will be a debate on this petition about calling a general election. A debate for that has been set. There are a number of things to say about this. Firstly is that Kemi Badenoch was not supportive of the direct democracy, let's stay in the EU petition. Second is that this is a very online trend, and I'm not sure that bringing up something that is trending on Twitter, I refuse to call it X, it is necessarily an appropriate thing to talk about. Not appropriate, but particularly, strong thing to talk about at PMQs. And her performance at PMQs this week, other than that, I thought was very strong because she sort of went hard on would there be more tax rises or borrowing. She went hard on the risk of job losses, on economic factors, and then she sort of threw in this very online student politics petition bit in the middle. But the final point is that we don't necessarily know a lot about who these people are. You are meant to put in a postcode. There's no verification process. We can talk a little bit about what the data that we do have shows, but just because something does really well online, particularly when it's been retweeted by Elon Musk, doesn't necessarily mean that this tells you a huge amount about nationwide British sentiment.
Well, no, exactly. We saw this enormous jump in figures because it was promoted by Elon Musk. I mean, what does he want from British politics?
Elon Musk wants to intervene in... No, he's not going to get that. Elon Musk wants to intervene in British politics to topple Keir Starmer. It's pretty clear. I talked to his father, a very strange man this week. Errol Musk. And he was again saying the trouble with Keir Starmer is that he's a fascist, Stalinist, anti-democratic, tyrant, and he must be pulled down. That is the sort of Elon Musk line at the moment. And this petition has indeed, if you look at the detail, got supporters from all around the world, all sorts of strange places, which are not Lincolnshire, North Korea, all over the place. So at that level, we don't take it seriously. But I think there's a much more important point as well, which is that this is, as it were, an informal, biased plebiscite. OK, and we are not a plebiscite democracy. We are a parliamentary democracy. And if we judged who is in charge by how popular they are at any one point, there is no British government since the Second World War or before that, which would have lasted very long. The periods when Attlee was incredibly unpopular. There were periods, when Churchill was unpopular at the beginning of the Second World War, and so on, and so on, and so on. So what he is doing is he's trying to introduce an element of disruption into the system, turbulence into the parliamentary system, because I think what Keir Starmer and Keir Starmer's opponents cannot stand at the moment is that compared to France, compared with Germany, compared with the United States, for the next 4.5 years, we are in a relatively stable position. He has a relatively large parliamentary majority. They may not like that. They may hate the idea of a Labour government, but that is how parliamentary democracy works. And once you start to introduce this element of stability and give it, the credence which Kemi Badenoch was giving it in the House of Commons, then I think you're into a very unconstitutional and very dangerous moment. And it's so interesting to me that the Conservatives, who keep talking about themselves being the party of the Constitution, the party of this is how we do things in this country, jump so quickly to this.
And it's interesting because, as we said, we don't know a huge amount about who has signed this petition. We can't verify them, but Ben Walker, our polling expert, has been digging into a little bit about who has signed it, where they're from, on the basis of what they've said. And actually, it would seem that Kemi Badenoch is not terribly sensible to be bigging up this election, because it's not really that good news for the Conservatives at all. Just talk us through what he's found, Rachel.
So Ben Walker's point is that the postcode data suggests that there are huge support for the petition in areas like North Yorkshire, like Lincolnshire, like Essex, that had a very strong reform vote. So there are sort of two things here. First is that there are lots of people signing it from all over the world, and they're probably not British citizens, and we can probably ignore them. But it's unlikely that people all over the world just coincidentally chose to put in postcodes that correlate with reform support. So there is clearly support for it in the UK, and it comes from those areas. It doesn't come from areas that are sort of strongly conservative, and this should worry the Conservatives, Ben argues, and should worry Labour as well, because it's a reflection of this anti-establishment sentiment that kind of goes, they're all as bad as each other, we need something new. And Ben also points out that, unlike UKIP, Reform's general support hasn't crashed since the election. It's polling at 18 to 20%. And there is real mileage for Nigel Farage in continuing to sort of push this narrative that the Conservatives are broken and rubbish, Labour are broken and rubbish, we need something new, and this is the kind of thing that he'll seize on.
I think Ben Walker's piece is an absolutely essential piece of reading, and anybody who is listening should try and get to it. It's a very, very interesting, very, very good piece of work. And I think the Conservatives it's absolutely right. The Conservatives shouldn't take too much comfort from this. We're in a very, very strange position, however, because what we should also say is this government is very, very unpopular, and that has happened very quickly. And we don't need Elon Musk and his petition to show us that. We just need our ordinary polling numbers to show us that. So it's both true that this is a piece of constitutional outrage and nonsense, and that Labour has a real problem right now.
And if we want to bring back a form of direct democracy like the ancient Athenians had, then maybe we could think about the process of ostracisation, where every year the citizens could vote for one person that they thought should be exiled. I think if we're going to just transplant ancient Athenian democracy onto 21st century Britain, that would be the policy that I would start with.
Your suggestions on a postcard, please.